Daniel 1, we're verse 13. Daniel's been saying, hey, look, we don't want to go through the normal program everybody else is doing. Just give us bread and water. Mush, rare mush is what they're eating. Verse 13, he says, then let our countenance be looked upon before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat the portion of the king's meat, as thou saidest, deal with thy servants. So he's saying, do a comparison. At the end of the 10 days, take a look and see if we're up to snuff. Verse 14. So he consented to them in this matter and proved them 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, their countenance appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat. Thus Melzar took away the portion of their meat and wine that they should drink and gave them pulse. And so it worked out. He says, I'll take a look at you and you're up to snuff. Everybody's looking up, so I'm going to let you go ahead and get away with it. This was a risk on his part because that was not the instruction he'd been given by the king. And of course, God made it work out, not Daniel or not Melzar. Exodus chapter 23, Exodus 23:25. If you'll do right with the right attitude, God will work out the hard stuff. All we do is the easy stuff. Obey. We put one foot in front of the other and God makes sure there's ground there. Exodus 23, verse 25. And you shall serve the Lord your God, and he shall bless thy bread and thy water, and I will take sickness away from the midst of thee. Bread and water is not all the same. We've noticed some water is good for you and some is not. You'd think water is water, but it's not. It's got different chemicals in it. Some of it's alkaline and some is not. Bread is not the same. Some bread has nutrients in it and some does not. So there's something you can't even see about the bread and water. God's saying here, I'll put the blessing in it if you'll do right. That's why I think that the diseases and everything have multiplied. God's been diminishing the nutrients in the bread and the water. Even the ground cannot bring forth like it used to. We've just depleted the nutrients out of it. But we hadn't depleted it. God said, bye-bye. Psalm chapter 37. Psalm 37, verse 16. 37:16. He says, a little that the righteous man hath is better than the riches of many wicked. You've found that to be true. If you're saved, it feels like you don't have everything you need. But by the time you get to whatever point you thought you were going to need it at, God had already provided it. You don't have to have everything right now. That's the fallacy of the young people, is they think they've got to have everything now. No, just hold on. There's plenty of time to get more junk. And after you've lived for, I don't know, 10, 15 years on your own, you start realizing this junk has a life of its own. And before I know it, it's multiplied. And I got to start calling out this junk. Don't get hung up on junk. We get Haggai 1. And if you can find that one, you're doing good. I know it. Zechariah, Malachi. This is the book about rebuilding the temple. Haggai 1:6. It says, you've sown much and bring in little. You eat, but you have not enough. You drink, but you're not filled with drink. You clothe you, but there is none warm. And he that earneth wages to put it into a bag with holes. This is God trying to get their attention. He's been doing the same thing worldwide. The food is not there. The money is not there. The clothes are not there. It's all falling apart. I liked BMWs. BMW is a nice car. And it's a nice, heavy, well-made vehicle. And I started working at BMW. And I was like, this junk is not the same as I considered a BMW. The new BMW is bare sheet metal. They don't put a shroud under the hood. They don't give you the extra tools that are specialty tools you need. That's the way everything's going. Ethan Allen furniture used to be great furniture. Now you open up Ethan Allen, and they have a whole line of particle board furniture. Junk, just like all the rest of it. Right. All of it's just going right downhill. That's God trying to get your attention. You need him. Look at Malachi, next book, or 3 books over, Malachi 2. Malachi 2:2. There's a lot more in the book of Malachi than tithe, which is the only thing that most preachers can see in the book. Malachi 2:2. He says, if you will not hear, and if you will not lay it to heart, to give glory unto my name, saith the Lord of hosts, I will even send a curse upon you, and I will curse your blessings. I have cursed them already, because you do not lay it to heart. God sends curses. People don't realize that. God can curse or bless, and he does both regular.
Or curse to bless.
That's right. He says, that's right.
The blessing.
He blessed them, and they didn't do what he expected them to do with it. Give praise to him. You expect gratification. When somebody gives you, or you give someone something, you expect them to at least say thank you or enjoy using it or something. And God says, we got a bunch of spoiled brats down there. I'm going to fix them. We covered 3 years. That's a time period. And I say that's the first stage of spiritual growth, is a 3-year time period. Then we saw 10 days. 10 days is a testing period for either getting cursed or getting blessed. Daniel 1, verse 15, he says, at the end of 10 days, their countenance appeared fairer and fatter. This book is all about ends. Something happening and there's an end, a conclusion. The salient passage in Daniel is chapter 9, the 70 weeks and how it's going to end. Their captivity is coming to an end, and he's figured out the number of years it's going to be. Over and over, he's referring to end. Well, that's because this whole book is pointing you to the literal end, Revelation, where it's all going to end. And where did I tell you to go? Daniel 8. Let me go there. Daniel 8, verse 17. Daniel 8, 17. So he came near where I stood, and when I came, I was afraid and fell upon my face. But he said unto me, understand, O son of man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision. Over and over, you're going to get some deep things in this book, and we've not hit them yet. But we'll get there soon, and it'll be deeper than we can handle. But there's some deep stuff in here, and he's told you right here, some of this you're not going to get until the end. And I do believe that we've not figured out all the things in the book of Daniel or Revelation, because it's not the time of the end yet. God's left some things in there for the tribulation saints, Moses and Elijah and the 144,000 to come in and explain to people. But we do our best. Look at Genesis 41. Genesis 41. Daniel is much like another character. He's real, you'd call them brothers almost. Daniel and Joseph. Genesis 41, verse 14. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon, and he shaved himself and changed his raiment and came in unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream. So he became Martin Luther all of a sudden. He had a dream. This is an odd thing. God's giving visions and dreams in these days, but it's because they did not have a Bible. People like to regress. They like to go backwards. I have over 1,000 videos on YouTube. I have one video that has a little over 5,000 views, and it gets about 10 comments a day or a week. It's the New King James versus the King James. And I didn't think that was much of a video anyway, but that one gets all the hate mail. People want to regress. They want to go back to the originals. Why would you go back to a language you couldn't understand? Wouldn't you need somebody to come in and translate that? Somebody's already done that. 40 men got together and translated it for you. Put it in your language you can understand. Why would we go backwards? People like to regress. Numbers chapter 12.
Because he's brainwashed.
That's it.
It's
These dreams are the way that God revealed himself early on, before there was a canon of scripture written. Dreams and visions. But once that's over with, when we've got a book in our lap, we've got something way more authentic than a dream. Somebody dreams a dream. There's a million interpretations for that thing. And how do you know whether or not the interpretation you're getting is the right one?
correct.
And a million people are going to give you a million different explanations of what the interpretation of a dream is. How about a black and white print? Words on the page. That doesn't change. I like that one. Numbers 12, look at verse 6. That's right. Numbers 12, and some red in there too. Numbers 12, verse 6. And he said, hear now my words. If there be a prophet among you, the Lord will make myself known unto him in a vision, and will speak unto him in a dream. That's the way God did it. He's not doing that anymore. Everything's been written down. Now, I'm not going to go so far as to say God does not still give dreams. That's how I got saved. Not that I was saved in the dream, but I was under conviction because of a dream. Now that he's still doing. In countries where there is no canon, there's no Bible in their language, or they can't get a Bible, God will give them a witness. That's God's job. Jesus said, if I be lifted up, I'll draw all men unto me. So he's literally doing it, period.
I was going to say up in New York when I was living with my mom as a young, I wasn't around the gospel. I wasn't in church. And my testimony can be like that. Somebody in a foreign country where I had not been there.
Lady that got saved, that's what she thought. She saw Jesus. She was relying on that. That's her son.
Yeah. Anybody's dream or nightmare has got to line up with the written word.
Right.
Otherwise, we've exalted a human and their imagination above what God's written. And that cannot happen. Daniel 1, look at verse 18.
It was Nabil Qureshi. He was a Muslim.
A lot of Muslims,
Yeah.
Daniel 1, verse 18. Is now at the end of the day, there's that end again. The king had said he should bring them in. Then the prince of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. So they're paraded in there. It's been 3 years now. That was the 3-year training program. Time is up. Now go stand before the king. The king is very wise. This is not somebody you mess with. Nebuchadnezzar was a great organizer. He was a great builder and also a great military might, a brilliant general. He's going to bring them in, and we're going to find out he's no dummy himself. He's the one giving the final exam, and he's going to find out whether or not they learned all the things they were supposed to learn and who had an aptitude for it and who did not. Verse 19, and the king communed with them, and among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king. Now, all of them had come in before the king, and it says now, therefore stood they before the king. The indication I see here is that of all of them that came in, he says, everybody failed but these three. I want to test them even harder. That's what you get when you go to school. When you go to school, the course starts and you get with fairly easy tests. As the course continues, the tests get harder. And at the end there's a big exam. That's what's going on here. And it comes that 4 of all of the people who've been tested are the top of the heap. 20, Daniel 1:20. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10, there's that number again, times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in all his realm. And Daniel continued even to the first year of King Cyrus. That is, he outlived all of Nebuchadnezzar's descendants. Now, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. It's important that the head doesn't rule the individual. If you put a bunch of facts and figures in your head and you can spout those out, your heart will reveal who it is. If the heart is just relying on the head's facts and figures, you're known as being, know that. If your heart is to be for getting the gospel out, that's known as well. I recall, he's dead now, but Bob Lieb, I met him up at Bagel Heads one day. And no, it wasn't Bagel Heads. What was that? Dunkin' Donuts. And we got there, and there was a black guy sitting there next to me, and we just all got in our donuts. And Bob, of course, had to witness to him. He said, "Now, are you saved?" And he was going to tell him. And the guy said, "Well, I'm trying, or I'm hoping so," or something like that. And Bob says, with a smile on his face, and you could feel that he was excited and happy. It's the words I'm going to say sound negative, but you would not have taken it negative when you heard it come out of his mouth. He said, "Let me be the first one to tell you, you're going to hell." But you could feel it was sincere, and he had the answer, and he was excited about it. The heart reveals himself. However, if it was just facts and figures, that would have shown too. The heart's got to be true. Now that's Daniel. He's determined, he and his friends, that they're not going to be corrupted. Therefore, when he stands before the king, can sense there's something different about these boys. And there will be about us too. Proverbs chapter 23.
Yeah. Said sincerity.
Yes. Daniel 23, verse 7. For as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Now, we're going to find Nebuchadnezzar right here. And all of these pagans eat and drink, say to thee, but his heart is not with thee. Nebuchadnezzar was not trying to serve the living God. Not yet. I think he does eventually. However, at this point, he's out for number one, and we're going to find here in the next chapter, he's about ready to cut all their heads off. He doesn't care anything about anybody, and just because he's giving them the best food they've ever had in their life does not mean he's particularly interested in them. Daniel's just the opposite, and the king notices this. Luke chapter 6. A person normally does what they want to do. That's one of the great things about witnessing to somebody is you don't have to find their sin. They know what that is. All you have to do is put out the fact that they're a sinner before God. That's enough. Let God interpret that for them. In the heart is hidden some communications that only reveal between that individual and God. Luke chapter 6, verse 45. He says, a good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is good. And an evil man out of the evil treasures of his heart bringeth forth that which is evil. For of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaketh. This is an important verse. It tells you you don't accidentally say something. It was in your heart in abundance before it ever came out of your mouth. You don't just slip up and curse. It had to be in your heart in abundance for it to fall out of your mouth. It's like this cup hardly has anything in it, so I can swash it around and there we go, it's coming out now. That one doesn't work. But if you filled it all the way up, just a little slosh, and that comes pouring out. That's the man's heart. Your heart, if you'll fill it with the word of God, good things, those good treasures, then that's what's going to come pouring out of your heart. And people know it. Colossians 3, verse 2. Made a mess down here. Right. Colossians 3, 2. Says, set your affection on things above and not on things on the earth. Affection. Those are the things you love. He didn't say that it's impossible to have a good affection. No, you're going to have affection. That's the way he created us. So just find a good affection. You're going to find a good affection, something out of this world. That's right. The things that are not seen are eternal. Now that's a good investment. Spend your time, your imagination, and your energy on those things. Daniel 2. We made it through one chapter. Daniel 2, verse 1. And in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep brake from him. We've all done that. You had a bad dream, and you woke up and you couldn't remember what the dream was. That's what he's going to do. This whole chapter is going to begin the deep side of the book of Daniel. So we got one simple chapter and the rest of them are not. That's why I like this book. This begins what's known as the time of the Gentiles, or times plural of the Gentiles. This is when Babylon comes to the top as the ruler. What they had pushed off Assyria, and now it's Babylon who's ruling the world. Those are Gentiles. And these Gentiles are going to continue ruling the world until they're stopped. The way they're stopped is they're stomped. Jesus Christ comes back at the second advent and puts an end to it. But until then, it's a Gentile rule. That's not the way it had begun. The way it began was God picked him one nation, and that was the nation that was supposed to run all other nations. They apostatized, and God said, okay, turn it over to the Gentiles. And he says in Romans, that was done to make them jealous. Genesis 20, verse 3. We read about Nebuchadnezzar getting a dream. And we think that's odd that God's dealing with a Gentile with a dream. We would understand if he was doing that to a Jew, but he's doing it to a Gentile. God is so keenly interested in his people that when his people interact with a Gentile, He puts the Gentile in the mix. Anytime there's tongues going on in the New Testament, it's always connected with a Jew in their presence. The same thing in the Old Testament. These dreams would normally happen to a prophet, but here he's going to do it to a Gentile king. Look at it in Genesis 20, verse 3. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said unto him, Behold, thou art but a dead man. For the woman which thou hast taken, for she is a man's wife. Here he's come to a Gentile king and warned him instead of just killing him. Genesis 31, see it happen again. Genesis 31, verse 24. Right. And God came to Laban, the Syrian, in a dream by night, and said unto him, Take heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. That is, stay neutral, buddy. You don't know what's going on here. Now that's Laban. Now Laban was not a good guy. You read that story and you find out that he's crooked, but God shows up to him all the way through. Anytime it's connected to his people, God's very involved. Genesis 41, verse 1. And it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. And behold, there came up out of the river 7 well-favored kind and fat-fleshed, and they fed in the meadow. What kind of cow are you? You're a fat-fleshed cow? What do they say? I got big bone person. How about a fat-fleshed person? I'm not fat. I got fat flesh. Numbers chapter 12. Numbers 12, verse 6. God has told them he's going to show up in dreams. This is Old Testament. Numbers 12, verse 6. And he said, Hear now my words. If there be a prophet among you, I, the Lord, will make myself known unto him in a vision, and will speak unto him in a dream. God saying, the prophets I'm going to come down there and have a personal chat with. And it wasn't limited to Jews. We see it going on with the Gentiles over and over. Now that causes problems. Because what happens when a false prophet shows up and says, I had a dream too. And it said, don't go to Babylon. You're not going to be carried away captive. And that's what's going to happen is we're going to find some false prophets come in that claiming that they've got dreams too. There's got to be something superior to dreams. It starts with the dreams. Job 33, verse 15. If you learn nothing else, you'll learn from reading the Bible that the time you're supposed to be sleeping is at night. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falleth upon men, in slumberings upon the bed, then he openeth the ears of men, and sealeth their instruction. That is, and now I've had this happen too. I'm sure everybody has. You'll be snoozing, and you'll wake up, and all of a sudden you'll think of either something that you got to do, and it was instruction, and you go write it down. Usually for me, it's Bible. It's with that or that problem you're trying to figure out. Here's the answer, and that verse goes with that. Now, when those things happen, you have to get up and you got to write it down. You got to do something with it. Or when you wake up, it will be gone, just like happened with Nebuchadnezzar. Jeremiah 23:28. There's lots of false prophets going to show up and, of course, mimic the real deal. Well, if the real deal has been people telling about their dreams, and that's prophecy, then it's easy to fake it. Just tell everybody you had a dream.
That's why we got to buy.
That's it. Jeremiah 23:28. The prophet that hath a dream, let him tell a dream. He that hath my word, let him speak my word faithfully. What is comparison? Chaff to the wheat, saith the Lord. Chaff is refuse. That's refuse. That's the stuff that the shell on the outside. The inside is what you want, the wheat. So he's saying of those two, there's dreams and there's his word. One of them he calls chaff, and one of them he calls wheat. It's his word that's wheat. Dreams are just chaff. Hebrews 1, verse 1. This crowd is, but we should really be thankful for the Bible. I'd probably be pretty critical if I had to depend on somebody's dreams and somebody's visions to tell me what's going on. Hebrews 1, verse 1. God, who at sundry times and in divers manners spake in times past unto the fathers by the prophets. That's the way you used to have to get God's word. Verse 2. hath in these last days spoken unto us by his Son, whom he hath appointed heir of all things, by whom also he made the worlds. That is, God himself showed up. Now, you've got God's word, so we don't need dreams. Now, God may do a dream to drive you to his word. He may do a dream to confirm his word, but he'll never do a dream that contradicts his word. If that happens, it's of the devil. Daniel 2:2. Then the king commanded to call the magicians and the astrologers and the soothsayers and the Chaldeans for to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. The test is for real now. In the previous chapter, at the end of it, the 3 years was up and they had to all come in and get a little test from the king. I guess they've all been approved. Okay, you ask. We're not told about what to the ones that failed, but we're probably going to see that they were no more. This king, if you didn't come up to his standards, he eliminated you. So probably of the graduating class, Daniel's graduating class, all of them were successful and got a passing grade because the others are no longer alive. Here, the king says, come on in. Now it's happened for real. I need help. And that's why he gave them 3 years worth of good food. Deuteronomy 4. Deuteronomy 4, verse 19. The king is trusting on magicians, magic. He's looking to the supernatural, but it's a dark supernatural. Pagans have done this for years, and now supposed Christians are doing it with the horoscopes. And all of that junk that you depend on to give you an answer, the fortune cookie. I'm for a good joke, that's fine. But the second somebody does that and tries to put some kind of trust and belief in it, it's satanic. Because it's somebody telling you the future that's not God. That's what Nebuchadnezzar is doing. Deuteronomy 4, verse 19. He says, unless thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, and when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, even all the host of heaven, shouldst be driven to worship them and to serve them, which the Lord thy God hath divided unto all nations under the whole heaven. He says, don't be trying to read the stars. That's what they're doing. They're reading the stars. They say, what's your sign? It's stupid. I don't know. What's your... No, it's some sign you were born under. You know, something. I don't know. I don't even know what all the astrological names are. But that's supposed to mean something and supposed to be your gravitational pull and your magnetic rings and all this garbage based on when you were born. That's living by the stars. Stars are not all good things. There's fallen stars up there, angelic hosts. Deuteronomy 18.
They do know things.
Yes, they do. Yes, there's power in it.
That's right. That's why I think Nebuchadnezzar
Yes, you
saw some things going on were being revealed to us.
will see it follows suit with the way their pagan gods did. The pagan gods did not come to them with a message of mercy. Pagans showed up with a message of violence. So when he has this dream, he wakes up from it and he's scared. He can't remember what the dream was. He's assuming that it's going to be a violent dream because that's what all the gods have done before. And so he wakes up from it and he's expecting there to be some satanic, like all of the pagan, what do they call it? The mythology. Mythology. That's what it, or Greek, all that stuff. That's what he's expecting. But comes to find out at the end of it wasn't some phony thing. It was the real deal. He had called on all of his phonies who were good in this mythology business. And they come in there and they say, this is over our head, something different. But his response was, hey, I woke up scared. Therefore, I need to contact the people who get in touch with these gods that scare you. And that's where he was going. These are probably the magicians here. This is another name or a derivative of the name Magi. Everybody knows that name. That's who came to give gifts, the nativity. That's right. That's the manger scene, is the Magi, the wise men showed up. That's these same people that have been reading the stars. The Magi says, we saw his star.
Right.
Okay, they're fixated. Deuteronomy 18, verse 10.
Like Job.
Yes, we're going to get there. Mm-hmm. Yep. Deuteronomy 18:10. There shall not be found among you any one that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, or that useth divination, that is, doing some enchantment, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or wizards. Harry Potter is out the window. Says it right there, no wizards. Or a necromancer. For all things are an abomination unto the Lord. And because of these abominations, the Lord thy God hath driven them out before thee. Thou be perfect with the Lord thy God. That is, in this area, there's no wiggle room. I don't want any satanic influence. Verse 14. These nations which thou shalt possess hearkened unto observers of times and unto diviners, but as for thee, the Lord thy God hath not suffered thee to do so. He says, yes, they read the stars and the tea leaves and whatever else they could read. But it wasn't English. They looked in the liver. You'll find another passage there where they looked in the liver. They'd go out to war and they would cut open an animal and look in the liver. If the liver was healthy, then the battle was going to come out good. If the liver looked bad, then the battle was going to be a bad one and you better stay home. That was that was one of those superstitious things. And that's all derived. The devil gets behind all of that mess. Yes. Yeah. Right. Job 25, verse 5. Verse 5. Behold, even the moon, and it shineth not, yea, the sun not pure in his sight. If God doesn't consider the stars to be right, I don't think you want to get a message from them. That's what he said right there. The stars aren't even pure in his sight. Therefore, he's not using them to give you a message. Isaiah 47. Isaiah 47, verse 13. He says, thou art weary in the multitude of thy counsels. Let now the astrologers, the soothsayers, the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee. Behold, they shall be as stubble. The fire shall burn them. They shall not deliver themselves from the power of the flame. There shall not be a coal to warm at, nor fire to sit before it. He's saying here, go ahead and try out all of your phony superstitions. When I get down there, we'll see who wins. It doesn't work out. Verse 15, thus shall they be unto thee with whom thou hast labored, even thy merchants from thy youth. They shall wander every one to his quarter. None shall save thee. Doesn't matter what you go to. All of these pagan phonies will prove themselves to be a phony eventually. The problem is it's too late once they prove themselves to be a phony. Jeremiah 10, verse 2. This is who that is. That's
Groundhog.
it's a monthly prognosticator, so it's astrology. It's what your monthly horoscope. 10 is the practice of what we know as Christmas. But notice how it starts. Verse 2. Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. Now, I've done it. I don't have time to do that 2-hour program, but I did a thing on how they looked at the stars, and they thought that northern star was a handle. And when the Queen of Heaven up there decides to move that handle, it spins the stars. When the Little Dipper changes direction or changes its position, then they know it's summertime. When it's winter, a different position. So they pray to the Queen of Heaven to get her to move the handle so they get summer again. Bring things back to life, because in the winter everything has died. And all of that is, if you plotted out the 4 positions of the Big Dipper, whatever that dipper is, you get a swastika, which is where all of that comes from. He says, don't learn the way of the heathen. The best they can get from their enchantments and all of their superstition is this: dismayed. I'm glad we've got God. He doesn't dismay you. Now, if he does, it's to make you happier. If you've got something and he says, let go of it, it's for your good. It'll make you more happy. Jeremiah 27, verse 9 says, therefore hearken not ye to your prophets, nor to your diviners, nor to your dreamers, nor to your enchanters, nor to your sorcerers, which speak unto you, saying, ye shall not serve the king of Babylon. Here's a false prophet. It's more than a false prophet. This shows you how corrupt that Israel had become at this time. They were considering soothsayers and enchanters on the same level with prophets. Bad news. If we're not careful, that's the way the mass of Christianity is going to head too, because they follow in suit with what Israel has done. Verse 10, for they prophesy a lie unto you, to remove you far from your land, and that I should drive you out, and ye should perish. I've got too many verses in this second. I'm just going to tell you what the verses. No, I'm not. I got my hit in here. I've already taken you 5 minutes late. We'll pick up. Remind me. I'll try to make a note on this. We'll pick up on that same thought when we come back next week. We'll pick up at Amos 5, verse 26.